No emails, no Slack, not a lot of meetings, and yet my small business is really productive. What I'm going to be sharing today are the things we do to make that email-free existence possible, and it's been working really well for us over the last 7 years. We've even shared it with a lot of our clients who have gotten value too. So I want to break down the 5 practices we have to have an email-free team with you here in case it helps you as well. For the very first of our 5 principles, I want to talk about prepping for meetings, namely that you do it and you require it. So what we do at ProcessDriven is before every single meeting that exists, there is a task that says prep for this meeting. Now, the way the prep works is going to be a little bit different for each meeting, but the key piece is that we always have this task created. When there's a meeting, these pieces go with it. This is what a typical prep task would look like for a project scrum call. And when you see that task, what you would do is click the button to open the actual agenda itself. The agenda for a scrum might look something like this. And when you're doing that prep and looking at that agenda, your job when prepping is to add things if you have anything to add and to review everything that's already there. The goal is that everyone fills in information in advance, and in the few minutes before the meeting itself, folks can actually read what is on there, so we're not spending time discussing something that can be more quickly read through. This allows meetings to be shorter and less frequent because more of the discussion and information sharing can be done on our own time. Ooh, and I should probably call out, prepping for a scrum like this might take about 5 minutes. Prepping for a retrospective project like this one might be something you contribute to 5 minutes every week until the project finishes. And prepping for a weekly all-team meeting probably takes around 8 to 9 minutes because the agenda looks more like this. By the way, if you'd like to see the agendas that I'm referencing for these specific meetings, I cover all of them up in this video right here. Not saying they're perfect, they're just what we use if you are curious. But moving on for this particular video, the second thing that allows us to be an email-free team is task management. And this is really the biggest lift in terms of work for us, but also in payoff. So what we do is we use a task management system, also called a work management platform. Now, we happen to use ClickUp, but honestly, the tool here is not the special part. You could use Asana, ClickUp, Trello, it doesn't really matter. The reason this helps us be email-free is how we use the tool. So for us, when we create a task, it's not just a record of, oh, we need to do this thing. It's not just a sticky note. For us, a task is a conversation container. So if I create a task to, well, actually, let's just look at this YouTube video that I'm filming right now. This is what the task looks like inside our account for filming this YouTube video. This is where I wrote the script. You can see it on the side. And here you can see I wrote a quick comment to Mariah because as I was scripting, I was like, man, I really shouldn't mention the Task Plunger freebie we have because a free online course for delegation, which you can find in the description, that doesn't make much sense for this video. I want to instead switch it to our webinar about how to systemize a business because I think it makes more sense for folks, and I'll put that in the description below. So when I had this information I needed to share about this video, and I needed to tell it to the project manager of this video, I could have sent an email. I could have gone to Slack and been like, hey, remember video, 421? I could have gone all these other places, but rather than retyping the fact that the video is 421, the fact that the call to action is this, I just hijacked the context that was already there and left a comment right on it. So I don't have to explain to Mariah, hey, I'm talking about episode 421. I'm keeping conversations right on the tasks they are relevant to. This practice of tracking all your tasks and having communication on the task and not in some random other area, this is the biggest change you can make to your team communication culture. This is the thing that we have seen transform our clients' companies because it really allows you to start focusing on the work at hand and organizing all of your communication around the outcomes, aka tasks, rather than who you happen to be talking to. Ooh, and actually looking at this script reminds me that I'm supposed to tell you now about the Blueprint, which is our free masterclass that goes over how you can use task management and SOPs and process to have a business that's organized and gets shit done without bureaucracy. That free training is in the description below this video, and I guess I can now check that off the script. Okay, moving on. Now, even though task management, I think, is the biggest change you can make to change your team's communication culture, I recognize it's not an overnight light switch you can just turn on or turn off. So for these next few, I'm going to make them easier. All right. So don't get afraid if number 2 is too much. Tip number 3 is around using NRN. NRN stands for no reply needed or no response necessary. And it's just something you sign off communications with. Now, it could be email if that's what you're still using, if you want to cut down the volume. but I use it frequently inside of our ClickUp messaging system, which is our main way to communicate. See tip number 2. But NRN allows you to avoid pleasantries from cluttering up your inbox, whatever kind of inbox that is, rather than you sending, hey, here's the file, and someone replying back, thanks so much. And then you having to be like, okay, yep, clear, and do that 20, 30 times over for however many times people respond to you. You simply put NRN at the end. But that brings us to tip number 4 from the 4-hour work week, which I clearly actually have here in real life with this hyper realistic, not image, real book here. One of the suggestions in the book is to write conditional emails to basically get ahead of potential questions before they are asked to prevent more back and forth. An example of this might be if you send somebody your calendar link and you're saying, here's my calendar link, book a time that works for you, thanks. That's a fine email, but you know what's better? Here's my calendar link, book a time that works for you. If none of the times work, send me 2 to 3 times that do work and we'll figure it out from there. See the difference? With the first method, if a time didn't work, you know what would happen? The person would reply and say, none of these times work. What other times work? You would say, how about these 2 times? And they would say, well, I don't know about those times. And then, and then eventually you'd find peace. But in the other method, if none of the times work, you would just get a reply saying, none of the times work. Here are 2 to 3 that work for me. Odds are one of those will work for you, and you've cut down at least a few rounds of back and forth communication. Now, as you might imagine, this also works for team communication as well. Just to give you an example, let's say your team is curious how you create these cute testimonials for social media, and they don't know how. They might ask you that, and you could respond with, oh, we use Social Juice, and it has this editor built in, and it's super awesome, which we will have linked in the description below. You could just send that. Or you could say, we use Social Juice for that. If you don't have account access, submit a ticket here and we'll get you access. If you do have access and you're not seeing it, here's a support doc by Social Juice that tells you where to find it and how to use it. Now, while this conditional message does take me a little bit longer to write, it saves me potential back and forth. Because again, what if they don't have access? They're going to say, well, I don't have access to that. All right, go support a ticket. Okay, I did a ticket, but where do I find it? Oh my gosh, here's where you find it. Like the ping pong is what we really want to avoid. And even if you keep using email, if you can reduce the amount of email by stealing these practices, why wouldn't we do it? Now, speaking of practices, as someone who's been in business for a while, you have some tricks of the trade. You know what works and what doesn't work. You know how to create Social Juice testimonials, and your new team members might not. You have forgotten more knowledge about your business than most people will ever learn. So where are you putting that? For most people, you're putting it in your head. You're memorizing it. You're hoping you don't forget and assuming you'll be there forever to tell people what you know. And that is really risky. Our main training at ProcessDriven helps you create operations playbooks to get your knowledge out of your head and into a system your team can follow. So if you are ready to not be the biggest risk to your business, check out the Blueprint Masterclass in the description below to start getting things out of your head. Now, speaking of getting things out of your head, my 5th tip for you is to get rules out of your head. And I don't mean rules like don't smoke in the restaurant, like not stuff like that. More so decision-making criteria. For example, you could establish a rule that says when a problem is worth less than $1,000, don't ask, just figure it out. It's not going to be a big deal. Talk more about that up here. You could set another rule that says we always prep for meetings. You could set another rule that says we don't email internally. You could set another rule that says if another nameless AI startup reaches out to sponsor the ProcessDriven YouTube channel, just gently tell them we are never going to be interested. Hypothetically. You can establish a rule for just about anything. And the power of these rules is if you create them in an accessible format, meaning they're something people know but can also easily find, they allow people to not need to ask you, aka not email you, not message you, not anything. They just feel empowered to make the decision, to make the call, because you've given them the decision-making criteria. Policies, procedures, rules like this are not about turning people into robots. In fact, the opposite is true. Our goal is to just give the power of moving forward to the people who actually need it. So we can design our process so Bob doesn't need to ask accounting before doing a refund. He can just do it if it's under a certain amount or whatever criteria we define. By creating normal states that don't require communication, we can way cut down on the number of emails, Slacks, whatever else we need to have. And when you combine this with the other tips we've already talked about, hopefully it's clear how my team operates without ever using email internally. Now, I think I should clarify here. When I say no internal email, the reason I say that is because if a client emails us or if a potential client emails us, yeah, we're going to respond. Unfortunately, the rest of the world still uses that archaic system. So I can't say we're completely off of it entirely, but we don't use email, Slack, or anything like that for our internal purposes. We are just in our task tool. And if we need to send a quick DM, we can, but that's very rare. However, if I were to say not using email is the only reason my small team is really productive, I'd be lying. The truth is, it's not just our communication that makes the magic happen. It's how we manage projects and tasks and overall just focus to make sure we're working towards the right thing. But don't worry, I do break all of that down in this video right here. Check out the description for the other links I mentioned. And until next time, enjoy the process.